the sound with Steffi.
Let's dance.
Put on your big boy
Let's
pants.
Good morning, Malcolm Nance.
Oh, you need to start telling me what's good about it.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I already read from your Substack piece on Monday because, of course, you're the person I couldn't wait to talk to most about this, just the horrors that are going on.
Yeah.
Surrounding in Israel. And I read right off the top of the show this morning your all caps tweet warning: do not watch hostage videos, do not transmit hostage videos, do not post videos of the dead, do not describe execution videos. This is integral to the Hamas information terror strategy. Pass it on. So I want to get to your whole take on what's happening in Israel, but can I just ask a stupid layperson question about this,
Sure.
what you referred to here? If you're trying to win any hearts or minds for the Palestinian cause, why? Why are you doing this? Beheading babies and executing grandmothers and posting it on their Facebook page and etc. I mean, can you just talk to us about that, about the strategy of why they would do this degree of barbarism?
Sure. Well, first, let me just put this into perspective for those of you who don't know, even though you've been hearing about me on Ukraine for the last 17 months. This is what I did for nearly 40 years, which was work that particular part of the world. My first 10 years in U.S. intelligence was working against, Hezbollah, Hamas, other Palestinian terrorist groups in the Eastern Mediterranean. And let me tell you something. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed, and to give you an answer to your question, is that Hamas was always one of the most radical Palestinian groups. When the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank was sidelined, that was Yasser Arafat and all the old OG terrorists who were ready to negotiate, Hamas got itself elected in an election and then never relinquished power for 17 years.
Yep.
They put Gaza essentially into a stranglehold of only Hamas being the only type of resistance you could have. To a large block of people and to a large block of young men who have nothing to do and dispossessed, this seems heroic. But what they did was they did the ISIS-fication of Hamas. They decided that when they went across that border, instead of attacking the Israeli army, they mass murdered every person, not Jew, every person they came into contact with. They are no better than ISIS. They have adopted all of ISIS's tactics.
Yeah.
Beheading children is a real thing. The journalists went into that village yesterday. They saw the cribs. They saw the places. I mean, I'm writing furiously on Substack. I can barely keep up with it because I can't put anything out on Twitter other than warnings and shouts because I have leagues of pro-Hamas, pro-Moscow, pro-neo-Nazi people coming on there and just jamming up all the works. So I have a photograph of a child's baby carrier that was in a car where it is clearly the child was shot right through the heart and the baby carrier is covered in blood. What Hamas did was they've declared themselves enemies of the world, not enemies of Judaism, not enemies of Israelis. They have decided they want to be ISIS. They're going to get the ISIS treatment now, which is total, inevitable, destruction of every one of them. That organization, when this is done, will cease to exist, and it will be, literally, on the exact same level as ISIS. It will be a world effort.
Yeah. By the way, I have only dumb civilian questions today, dumb layperson questions for the terrorism expert. But I mean, again, what I think your explanation would go to the point that Hamas is not they don't want peace. They don't want a two-state solution because that's what I was saying is even as propaganda, why are you putting out this? Yeah, exactly. So, right, they want every Jew dead. I mean, so that's not, well, anyway, it goes to your piece initially about what was happening. I think Netanyahu's awful. Netanyahu's awful and Hamas is awful. I mean, it's, you wrote a piece about how this is Israel's intelligence failure, period. Of course, the right wing here on Q are all trying to blame Biden. And, you talk to us a little bit. I read from your piece on Monday that you just said, given the scope, complexity, and impact of this attack, the incursion is a massive failure of Israeli intelligence. Despite pundits who are tempted to call this an American failure, it is not. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Look, that's because all of our intelligence at the street level about Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, threats which may emerge out of eastern Egypt, comes from one of two sources: Israeli intelligence. They have three intelligence agencies: the Mossad, which does their deep overseas and deep human intelligence activities equivalent to the CIA; the Aman, which is Israeli Army military intelligence, which was surrounding Gaza; and then Shin Bet, which is the Israeli equivalent of the FBI that does all contact in human intelligence and signals intelligence against Hamas and every other Palestinian group and any Palestinian within Israel, and all of them failed. That's why, I'll tell you why they failed. I wrote a book long ago. Actually, I have a copy sitting right here for those who are here. First book I ever wrote, the Terrorist Recognition Handbook. And there's an entire section in there about how terrorists communicate when they want to disappear from the face of the earth. What they do is they work in compartmented closed cells where only they know the other members of that cell. Then the team leader communicates through a cutout to the command element. With Hamas, it was exactly like it was done in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. They didn't use telephones. And when they used telephones to create strategic deception against the Israelis. So they knew everyone's phone is tapped. The Israelis had the entire place tapped. So they would go on the phone and they would say, hey, we're just going to do, our regular mobile training. They lied about the locations of their rockets. Every person that the Israelis send in as a spy is a Palestinian that was captured at a checkpoint. So they go home and they tell their mom, the Israelis tried to turn me as a spy. Hamas says, okay, great, take the money. Keep reporting all of this, ridiculous stuff that we're going to give you to report, and we'll deceive the Israelis, and then you can get a weapon and come with one of the terrorist cells.
Yeah.
Look, there could be 500 terrorist cells, and if they don't communicate electronically, it doesn't matter. You're never going to detect it.
Right.
I'm not joking. I spent years trying to collect electronically in the Eastern Mediterranean, and trying to identify the location of 76 American and other Western hostages over 10 years. If you talk in a shisha bar in a corner without an electronic device next to the hookah, you're never going to know what they say.
Yeah. Well, your larger point, you said, again, this is an Israeli failure on a massive level. It reveals that their oppression of the Palestinian National Authority in the West Bank likely closed intelligence-sharing loops that could have provided indicators of a possible secret plan by Hamas. Israel's sharp veering to the right, backing settlers to seize Palestinian lands extra-legally, indiscriminate killing of thousands of civilians every time there's an uprising, have hardened anyone in the Palestinian community to ever breach the wall of silence.
Never. Never. It's mafia-level omerta.
So,
they would rather die than talk.
Yeah. So I have so many. Here's my next dumb civilian question. So these hostages, of course, maybe I've seen too many movies and I picture a joint Mossad Navy SEALs operation to free the hostages. Tell us why. I know that other experts have said this is just incredibly difficult to do in this situation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about it as the person that developed the U.S. Navy and Special Operations Hostage Survival School, where we simulated Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and other terrorists for 5 years in a top secret program. The most dangerous part of hostage survival is always the armed recovery. And it's one thing to have an individual hostage. And like I said, I spent the better part of a decade trying to locate hostages. We located none of them. Our most successful releases were negotiations carried out by the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was a hostage, and had been released in Lebanon. This is going to come down to negotiation, because you're talking about a city 140 square miles, catacombed with hundreds of underground tunnels. The only way hostages are going to be released is if the Israeli army flows through the terrorists so fast that the hostages aren't moved, killed or injured, and are stumbled upon after the Israelis flow through. So it's the old line from Captain America, when Captain America says to the general, hey, what are you going to do about all those captive soldiers? And the general says, win the war.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it's going to be done. No one's going to be fast roping or flying helicopters in there, because they will get shot down. There will be a massacre, and the Hamas has been preparing for this for years.
Malcolm, I've never asked you this before, but can I hold you for one more segment? Would you mind? Do you have
Sure.
to go? Okay.
Why not? Because I've got all the time in the world now.
Okay. There's just too much important going on. I have too much. I could try to ram it all in, but let's, do we have a thing here? All right. We're going to take a quick break, and I've got a ton more with Malcolm, 46 minutes after the hour. With all of these, Josh Hawley tweeted, Israel's facing existential threat. Any funding for Ukraine should be redirected to Israel immediately. I mean,
Insane.
Oh my God. How do we not have the moral clarity in this country, particularly in a party you used to be in, to say an unprovoked terrorist attack, whether it's on Ukraine or on Israel, is the same? And America stands with democracy. How did we get here, Malcolm?
I just find it absolutely amazing how all of these Republicans have betrayed themselves to Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, a KGB officer, who, by the way, is working with Iran, all right, and we actually have photographic evidence of PMC Wagner members with Hamas who were training with Hamas. So I don't want to hear it from Josh Hawley. These people they're not traitors to themselves. How did they look themselves in the mirror with the death of all of these people? You know, there was some academic from the London School of whatever this morning that I had to go off on, because he said, how do you think the U.S., the EU, and the UK would feel if they saw pictures of this devastation in Ukraine? Where has this guy been for the last 17 months? There's estimated as many as 30,000 dead civilians in Ukraine. Yeah. It's not a game to sit there and compare apples and oranges. There are two wings of the anti-democratic movement fighting in Eastern Hemisphere now. Hamas, which is designed to kill, by the way, I keep saying that they are killing Israelis. When they crossed that border, they went to a farm that had like 100 Thai workers in it and mass murdered everyone who was there from Thailand. It wasn't about Jews. There were Ethiopians who were killed there. There were sub-Saharan African workers that were killed there. They are an anti-democratic terrorist organization hell-bent on killing anyone who is not them. They will be eliminated. On the other hand, their sponsors, Iran and Russia, are attempting to do the exact same thing in Ukraine, an existential war. We have two existential wars, which means they are fighting to eliminate them as a people. And we have Josh Hawley, who is a moron, and this other idiot, this Dr. Andreas Krieg, both saying, oh, well, what would happen if, this happens in Ukraine? Hawley wants Ukrainian money cut so he can give Ukraine to Moscow. That's it.
Malcolm, why? This is what I know there's some of us screaming about it. Obviously me, Mary Trump, others. But why is the mainstream media not focusing more? It obviously was in the New York Times that Trump shared Israeli intelligence with the Russians in the Oval Office, who I'm sure gave it to Iran, who gave it to Hamas. Are we going to get more actual proof of that? Is the mainstream media going to start covering this, do you think?
I don't know unless it comes out in the Israeli press. As I understand that it was about the capability of the Iron Dome missile defense system, which Hamas managed to overwhelm on the first day of firing. Yeah. They fired almost 4,000 rockets into Israel. Israel's literally running out of a weapon system that they were manufacturing. And in case, I had somebody go say this the other day, well, why didn't Israel give those to Ukraine? Apparently, it's pretty clear that they desperately needed them themselves.
Yeah.
And you know what? we haven't even seen the end of the rocket war.
Yeah.
So if Donald Trump gave the Russians capabilities and briefing on, whether Israel was attacking Iran or Israel was defending itself, it's just another one of the treasonous acts he did while in office.
What quickly, Israeli media reports now confirm the government did receive clear warnings from Egyptian intelligence about the imminent attack. Initially, Netanyahu's office issued a flat denial after the first report, but then reversed it. Also, in your piece, you put this, for Republicans blaming Biden, how about putting the blame where it belongs? Hamas and Netanyahu. This happened on
You know
Watch.
what? I also put in my if you go to Substack, read that article about intelligence failure. You got to pay for it. You got to become a paid contributor, subscriber to that. But it's worth it. It also said that Egyptian intelligence had a failure. But apparently Egyptian intelligence felt something was going on. They couldn't put their finger on it. Yeah. There are dozens of underground secret tunnels between Egypt and Gaza. The money to get through there illicitly without any checks with the Egyptians is just too good. This is how they get, Iranian trainers there. This is how Hamas members come out and practice in the Sinai Desert with ISIS-backed Egyptian terrorist groups out there. Yeah. The Egyptians knew something was going on if they told Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was more concerned about subduing the West Bank, which is where he apparently moved 3 brigades from Gaza up to the West Bank. He needs to be held to account when this situation stabilizes.
You also tweeted, thank you for this, Senator Tuberville, do your job. U.S. forces are near war. We know you were a physical coward and hid at college football and never served, but don't you dare assume you know better than General Hayden. Disgrace. I mean, not to mention, as I keep saying, the hypocrisy of the fact that Israel has abortions on demand, right? But that doesn't seem to, it just, there's so much rank hypocrisy on the right now in terms of...
How many rapes came out of this?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, let me tell you something. Tommy Tuberville is an absolute disgusting disgrace. How the Senate cannot maneuver around him is beyond me.
Yeah.
I don't get it. They need to change the rules or something along that lines. He literally said it's not hurting the U.S. military. For those promotions he held up, every one of those slots below them cannot move up into the position of authority.
I know I'm pushing it.
Down, deep down into the officer corps.
Can I keep you one more second? Just one more with Carlos?
Sure.
Okay. All right, and Carlos
wow.
Next. Remember when they used to have a very special episode of Blossom? This is that. We've held Malcolm Nance over. Carlos Alzraki is here to join the fray. Because we just have...
And my background, I'm just trying to be not as heavy with my background with sports in Rocco. So it's a very heavy day. I've tried to lay off and not react, rather try to respond. And I know Malcolm knows way more than I do, but the visceralness of, if that's a word, of what happened, is just, it's shaking and it's disturbing. Yeah. And then I agree with kind of Patton Oswalt's tweet that there's simultaneously we can disagree on causes of things, but the way things are handled, I'm not a Netanyahu fan and I'm not a Hamas fan.
Thank you. I've been saying that all week. Let me just, Carlos, because we're going to have the hour with you, but Malcolm, sorry, thank you so much for sticking with us, because literally everything was Malcolm stack this week, because you're not just a terrorism expert, but there's just so many facets to what's happening. And one of them that you tweeted about, somebody said the BLM chapter in Chicago just posted this in support of Hamas, and it's somebody parachuting with the I Stand with Palestine. And you just said, God, this is not hard, guys. These chuckleheads are not a BLM group. They are, a BLM group, not all supporters of the BLM concept. Call out the individual idiots. Don't tar 48 million African Americans who support the phrase BLM, GFC. Everybody calm the F down. It's just like you're saying, all these factions are trying to score political points right now, right?
And that opened up a bag of worms. I had dozens of people saying, well, you said Black Lives Matter weren't terrorists from the right-hand side. And then from the left-hand side, they were saying, well, we stand with the free peoples of Palestine. This isn't about the people of Palestine.
Correct.
Yeah.
The people of Palestine in Gaza are captives.
Yeah.
They are in a prison which was run by a terrorist group that apparently, this is amazing, they are supported by a Shia government of Iran They are Sunni Muslims, and for the sake of mass murdering any person they stumbled upon within the border of Israel, right? They've kept their own population captive.
Yep.
You can stand with Palestine, you can stand with Israel, you can stand with the Jews, you can stand with the Muslims, but you cannot stand with Hamas.
Yeah.
Hamas is a terrorist group. So what are the idiots that Black Lives Matter Chicago does, which, by the way, is their own name of their own selves, and they represent nothing else?
Yeah.
Is they put a picture of a paraglider skydiver on their picture with a Palestinian flag on it.
Yeah.
I hope that they were completely unaware that 50 paragliders sailed into that festival, the Nova Festival, gathered up and mass murdered 260 people.
Right.
So either you support that tactic, because why else would you have used that picture if you didn't know it?
It's very
in fact, you're not doing Palestinians any favors.
48 million African Americans and all of our other people who support the phrase Black Lives Matter. Yeah. There is no Black Lives Matter organization that's centralized.
Yeah.
So now everyone's getting tarred with their stupid brush.
Well, yeah, and you're not doing Palestinians any favors saying you stand with Hamas. No. Hamas is not Palestinians. And
I might be parsing this too much, but if a child is born in Palestine, they're not a prisoner. They have committed no crimes.
Nope.
Is it fair to say it's more of a concentration camp? Because they have not committed any crimes. If they're born into it, they're children.
The funny thing is that you have a concentration camp which has a series of guards around it that are internal. Hamas took control of Gaza 17 years, determined they would be the only authority. They beat the Palestinian Authority out. That was the OG, PLO that went to peace. When they went to peace, Hamas went to war. And they have spent all this time keeping everybody there as essentially a slave system to support this activity. Now, let's be honest, Hamas will not survive this encounter. Every man that touches a gun, every person that touches a gun there is going to be eliminated. The problem is, like we did in Fallujah, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. But in Fallujah, we actually took 6 months working with the Iraqis to remove 90% of the population of the city. And 11,000 civilians still got killed because 3,000 terrorists would not let them out and decided to use them as human shields and, got in the middle of warfare. That's what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Hamas must be eliminated.
Yeah, speaking of dumb right-wing takes in the U.S., not only do you have Hawley and the other Putin apologists saying, let's stop aid to Ukraine to give it to Israel, you've got...
So we could do it again in Ukraine? So you could have another Mariupol, mass murder, beheadings, rapes, killings? I don't understand them. So now suddenly lives that are in Eastern Europe that are against Moscow are disposable.
Yeah.
Or not, or are they equal to every lost life in Israel, Palestine? They're all equal. Yeah. But amazing, the two factors that are there, Iran and Russia, just happen to be at the back of both of these.
Thank
you. Surprise!
I was you brought up guns. Franklin Graham saying every Israeli should be forced to carry an AR-15. I don't know if, speaking of dumb take, I don't know if you saw the one story, the couple, man and woman, they're both officers in the Israeli army, have guns at home. The terrorists came in, Hamas terrorists came in and killed, they saved all their children, they hid them, but they were killed. They're highly trained officers in the Israeli army that had guns. It's just, the people using this to score dumb political points here, like Franklin Graham, I just think are despicable.
You know what? Okay, full disclosure. Lived in Israel, almost married an Israeli, spent time in that region for decades. You cannot walk around your whole life like it's Dodge City, which, by the way, that's not a good analogy. Dodge City had a no-gun policy in the city. This is a fantasy of the right wing where every person has an AR-15 and patrols around with it. In Israel, you see a lot of guns because they are all reservists going back and forth to their jobs, going back and forth because the country's the size of a very small part of the Northeast United States with almost 1 million man army and reserve force. Yeah. So you see a lot of guns. This is a right-wing fantasy.
One degree of Israeli separation. I almost married an Israeli tank commander, and this is magically full circle to Carlos. We thought she had a crush on you. Remember, Carlos? She would come in the studio while we were recording bits.
Yeah,
All right.
I might have before I had kids and it was a Burbank dad. Who knows? But was this just to go back and you probably discuss this? How was this massive security breach? How did this happen? With Israel being what we perceive to be really great at security and intelligence.
Listen, when I was a counterterrorism instructor, one of the most incredible, feasible, deadliest plans to attack the U.S. Navy was thought up by 2 junior petty officers. That's like, corporals in a counterterrorism class I had. It was so inventive, so adaptive, so clever. Mm-hmm. Not only did I destroy their papers, I have never spoken about what that plan was. If it got in the hands of a terrorist group, the imagination can bring someone to do something. Hamas understood all the strengths of Israel and decided to use asymmetric warfare, which is judo, against Israel. You set up all these fences, right? What we're going to do is we're going to practice breaching those fences. And when are you at your least effective? On your Sabbath morning. You have the minimum number of personnel. Can I point out to you, Pearl Harbor was on Sunday morning at 6:30 a.m. This attack was on Friday morning, their Sabbath, at 6:30 a.m. Yeah. Sound familiar?
Yeah. Nagasaki was at 8 in the morning, or Hiroshima was 8 in the morning, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason these things are done this way. It was a failure of imagination, the way we failed. But this is the equivalent of the United States being attacked by 30,000 terrorists.
Yeah.
Terrorists are clever and inventive. And if they can keep their mouths shut, they can carry out horrific mass murders. I said this. I said, with the exception of hijacking an aircraft and crashing it, every act of terrorism that had been carried out against Israel, hijacking cars, buses, landing commandos, shooting up police stations, ever since the founding of Israel, was carried out by Hamas in one day. I'm literally going through. The only thing that I haven't seen is the donkey suicide bomb from southern Lebanon. But they've done just about everything else.
We got to keep in mind.
Which means that they've harnessed their entire history to carry this out.
But they're a country of, 9-10 million, right? And we're 330 million.
Not million, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the scale of this is really astounding.
Terrific.
One last one, Malcolm. You held up your very first book on terrorism, and I just want to bring this full circle to your latest book, They Want to Kill Americans. And it just goes to this tweet by Liam on Twitter that I saved for you. Some of the Hamas terrorists were religious fundamentalists, but a lot of them are just young, pathetic, little bloodthirsty nihilists who want to burn everything down because their lives suck. It's the same problem America has with the basement-dwelling maggots. And I thought if ever a tweet was written for you, it brings you full circle to your book here and how this is all of a piece. Just talk to us about that.
It's so true. It's so true. And the only difference is, in the United States, you can self-start as a terrorist. You can just go out and get a gun and think up an act and do it. Or you can get together with a bunch of rubes and try to overthrow the government as you listen to a cult leader. Hamas is an organization. You can't have an AK-47 unless you're part of the terrorist group, unless you're a trained member, unless you are given a specific assignment and work together with a cell. That's the difference. The American one is disparate, and it's not been organized. But when it does, it's already organized around a cult-like ideology. And that's why I made many analogies to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, right down to those truck parade and boat parades. Okay? I mean, what you're doing is you are projecting ideological power in order to infiltrate the mind of people who are undecided, to make them believe that you have more physical power than you actually have. No difference between Hamas, in some instances. However, in this instance, Hamas is ISIS, period, end of story, and they are going to get treated like ISIS because they have chosen war. straight up war, state versus terrorist actor, and it's going to have the necessary result. Here in the United States, we don't know why they're biding their time. Many of them are cowards, but they like to play dress up and get their guns and raise the price of ammunition. But at some point, and I warned this in my book, these people, there's probably a group in there. We don't know who they are, but they're probably thinking they can get away with something similar.
Yeah.
Oh, one last point, Steph. All this crazy talk about tens of thousands of Hamas members are crossing the southern border and coming into the United States to do this same suicide attack is crazy.
Thank you.
The 9/11 hijackers flew in on an airliner as welcome guests.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And by the way, credit goes to Malcolm Nance for Vanilla Isis and Meal Team 6. So, all right. Malcolm, thanks so much for your generous time, and giving us so much time today. All right.
Subscribe to my Substack.
All right. Yes, please. And Black Man Spy, the podcast. Love you.